Hello everyone, welcome to the True Story channel, and thank you for being here today. Every time you click on one of these stories, you become part of a space where real moments, difficult choices, and human truths are shared openly. Tonight's story begins like an ordinary evening, but quickly turns into something no parent is ever prepared to face. Have you ever returned home after what felt like the most successful night of your life, only to discover that everything you believed about your family was about to be questioned? That is exactly what happened to me. If you stay with this story until the end, I truly believe you will understand something deeper about family, responsibility, and the quiet courage it takes to protect the people we love most. By the time I stepped out of the hotel ballroom in downtown Denver, my cheeks ached from smiling. The company's year-end party had gone better than I had imagined. Warm lights glowed across polished floors, glasses clinked softly in celebration, and the applause after my speech still echoed in my ears. One of our partners shook my hand firmly and said, "Daniel, you've built something solid here." I carried those words with me as I walked into the cold December air. For most people, stability might feel ordinary. For me, it had always felt fragile. I grew up in a house where calm rarely lasted, where arguments lingered in the walls long after the voices faded. Because of that past, building a peaceful life for my daughter Emma had become the most important promise I had ever made. The drive home felt quiet and reflective. Snow rested along the sidewalks, and the neighborhood lights shimmered faintly against the winter sky. Emma was at home with my parents while I attended the party, and my sister Rebecca had mentioned she might stop by to help watch her for a while. Nothing about that arrangement seemed unusual. When I turned into my driveway, the porch light glowed softly against the darkness. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed the front door. It was slightly open. I stepped inside and looked down. Emma was lying on the cold tile floor near the entrance, curled awkwardly on her side. One arm was trapped beneath her body, the other stretched weakly toward the door, as if she had tried to reach it. Her hair rested against her cheek, and her face looked far too pale. My heart slammed against my chest as I dropped to my knees beside her. "Emma?" I whispered. She didn't move. The moment I realized my daughter had not simply fallen asleep on the floor was the moment everything in that house began to change. There is a strange silence that appears when something is terribly wrong. A quiet that presses against your ears and makes every small movement sound louder than it should. Emma's breathing was still there, faint but steady beneath my hand. Yet the way her body lay against the cold tile told me this was no ordinary accident. I gently turned her onto her side, careful not to move her too quickly. Her hair slid across her cheek as I did, and the porch light spilling through the doorway revealed what I had not noticed at first. A long red mark stretched along the upper part of her arm. Another darker shadow was forming along her jawline. My stomach tightened in a way I cannot fully describe. Behind me, footsteps moved across the hardwood floor, slow, unhurried. I turned my head slightly. Rebecca stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall with her arms folded across her chest. She did not look frightened. She did not look concerned. If anything, her expression carried the dull irritation of someone who believed the situation was being exaggerated. "She's acting out," Rebecca said calmly. I disciplined her. For a moment, I could not respond. The words felt strangely familiar, like something pulled from a memory I had spent years trying to bury. Then, my parents appeared behind her, stepping out of the kitchen as though they had been quietly observing the scene all along. My mother sighed in a tired, dismissive way. My father nodded once, his voice steady. "She talked back," he said. "Kids need to learn respect." The room seemed to shrink around us. Those phrases echoed in my mind with uncomfortable clarity. I had heard them many times before when I was a child, standing in this same house. Discipline, respect, for your own good. Words that always arrived just after something painful had already happened. For a brief second, an old instinct rose inside me, the instinct to calm everyone down, to smooth over the moment before it turned into something larger. I had spent much of my life avoiding confrontation. Then Emma's fingers moved slightly in my hand. The movement was small, almost fragile, but it cut through every hesitation I had left. I stood slowly and walked toward the kitchen counter, where my phone rested beneath the overhead light. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I'm calling an ambulance." Rebecca laughed quietly behind me. "Don't be dramatic." My mother stepped forward immediately, her tone sharpening. "You're going to ruin her future over a little discipline." I didn't argue. I simply dialed. The emergency operator's voice filled the phone with calm, methodical questions. Age, breathing, visible injuries. I answered each one clearly, while the house behind me fell into a different kind of silence. Not the silence of peace, the silence before consequences arrive. The sirens arrived before anyone in the room had time to say another word. Their sound grew from distant to immediate, slicing through the quiet winter street until red and blue light began to spill across the walls of my house. In that moment, the story stopped, belonging to my family alone. Strangers were about to step inside, and with them came the weight of truth that no one in the room could quietly explain away. The paramedics entered with steady, practiced movements, the kind that come from years of responding to emergencies. A tall man carried a compact medical bag, while a woman in her 40s pulled on fresh gloves as she moved quickly toward Emma. Neither asked questions right away. They knelt beside her with quiet efficiency, their focus entirely on the child lying on the floor. A blood pressure cuff wrapped gently around Emma's arm. A small flashlight appeared in the woman's hand as she checked her pupil response. The man positioned a soft oxygen mask over Emma's nose and mouth. Their movements were precise, calm, and almost strangely quiet compared to the tension filling the room. I stood nearby, my hands trembling without permission. Watching strangers care for your child is a helpless feeling. You want to act, to do something useful, but all you can do is wait. The female paramedic rose slightly to adjust her gloves. Then she turned her head. Her eyes landed on Rebecca. The change in her expression was subtle but unmistakable. A brief pause, a narrowing of attention, like someone recognizing a face they had not expected to see again. She looked at me. "Ma'am?" she asked quietly, her voice controlled but careful. "Is that really your sister?" I nodded, confused by the question. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, because I've responded to a call involving her before. The words settled into the room like falling dust. Rebecca straightened instantly, anger flashing across her face. "What's that supposed to mean?" she snapped. The medic didn't respond directly. Instead, she turned slightly toward her partner, speaking in a low voice that still carried across the quiet hallway. "We need to notify," she said. "Mandatory reporting." I understood those words immediately. When medical professionals see signs that a child may have been harmed, they are required by law to report it. The male paramedic stood and addressed the room with calm authority. "Given the injuries and the prior incident, we're required to contact law enforcement and child protective services." My mother stepped forward at once. "This is a family matter," she insisted. The medic shook her head gently. "No, ma'am. This is a child safety matter." As they lifted Emma carefully onto the stretcher, her eyes fluttered open for a brief second. "Dad," she whispered. I closed my hand around hers. "I'm here." The moment the police arrived, the fragile illusion of a normal family night finally collapsed. Red and blue lights flashed across the quiet street outside my house, washing the walls in cold color. What had started as a private crisis was no longer something anyone could quietly dismiss. Questions would be asked, truth would surface, and for the first time that night, I realized the story unfolding in my home had already moved beyond control. The officers stepped inside calmly, but with unmistakable authority. One spoke gently with the paramedics, while the other began asking careful questions. My parents' confident tone slowly shifted into something more defensive. Rebecca stood near the hallway wall again, but this time the certainty in her posture had faded. "You're really going to let strangers judge us?" she said sharply. I looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment something old became painfully clear. The same rigid belief I remembered from childhood was still there, the belief that pain could be justified if it was called discipline. "No," I said quietly. "I'm letting them protect her." At the hospital, doctors confirmed Emma had a mild concussion and several bruises. She held onto my hand the entire time, as if letting go might make everything worse. Before we were discharged, a social worker sat down across from me. Her voice calm but serious. "We'll need to evaluate the home environment," she explained. I nodded once. "My sister won't be there," I said. That decision felt heavy, like placing a stone across the past and refusing to move it again. Later that night, Emma fell asleep in my bed, her small hand still wrapped around mine. The house was quieter than it had ever been, but the silence felt different now, less like fear, more like the beginning of change. Thank you for listening to this story today. But sometimes the hardest truths about a family only begin to reveal themselves after the night everyone thinks the story has ended.